Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Friendly Counselor live video. This month we have a few focus for the month of April. April is National Autism Spectrum Disorder Month. It is also National Child Abuse Month, so we are going to be highlighting all of that this month. We have a few things to highlight for the month of April. And apparently I found out that it's also National Girlfriend Sisters Month. We have a whole lot of celebration nowadays. Hey Noellen, how are you? Welcome to Facebook Live, Friendly Counselor tonight. So as usual, we are just going to wait. Hi Daphne, welcome to the Friendly Counselor Live. We will wait for a few more folks to come in. I'm a little bit under the weather today. I'm not my best. I'm not 100%, but I am going to do my best to to hold a conversation tonight. So thanks for joining in. Please share the video. Hello, Wasella. Thanks for joining in. Thank you so much, Daphne. Yeah, the weather, we have nice and hot and cold and warm and cold, and, that weather kind of throws people off. Hey, Comfort from all the way Germany. Thank you for logging on. Welcome to the Friendly Counselor Live. So again, I just mentioned earlier that the month of April is National Autism Spectrum Disorder Month, and also we will be highlighting a few things for the month of April. So for my topic tonight, I'm going to talk about autism spectrum disorders. It's a whole lot of disorders that most people are kind of confused when we talk about spectrum disorders, autism spectrum disorders. There's a lot of confusion about what causes it. There is a lot of questions about it. And I hope that this segment tonight will give you a broad understanding or a little bit of insight as to what autism spectrum disorders are. I also have a special guest who will be joining us later, and she will share her story from a perspective of a caretaker with a child who is on the spectrum. And so we will join in. She will join us in a few minutes after we begin. So I have a little joke for you guys. So the story is told. You probably heard of this, but the story is told of two hunters. They went in the forest to hunt. And when they went out to hunt, as soon as they started, got the gears and everything ready, they got into the forest. One friend fell and he fainted and he seems unconscious. So his friend called to him and said, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right?" And he didn't answer. So he put up his phone and he started to dial 911. So he called the emergency line and he said, "Hey, I have an emergency. I have a friend here. We're in the forest and I think he's dead." And he was so anxious, so nervous. "Oh my God, I think my friend is dead." So the operator asked him, "Are you sure your friend is dead?" He said, "Yes." So he said, "Well, first of all, let's make sure he's dead first." So he turned around to his friend. He took his gun and he went boop and shot his friend. And then he got back on the phone and he said, "Now what? Now what?" And the guy was like, "Now what? What do you mean now what?" "Now what? He's dead." He made sure that his friend was dead by killing his friend, not even checking to see if, his friend was actually dead. When I read that, I thought that was so funny. But I know some people may not find it funny, but I'm sorry. So Australia, I'm sorry, Comfort, you are in Australia. Did I say Germany? Welcome all the way from Australia. So tonight we will be talking about, what is autism and the spectrum disorders that we hear about all of the time. What are some signs and symptoms? What are some early warning signs? What are some things that folks should watch out for? April is the month of autism. We are highlighting the disorder spectrum, disorders. So for this month, starting with today, I would just highlight a few things. So when we hear about autism spectrum disorder, is a few disorders that are developmental in nature. So they are developmental disorders, and most likely with social disturbances, communication, behavior challenges. So I know sometimes people say that, oh, I can tell by looking at a person that they are on the spectrum. That is not always true. Not everybody that is on the spectrum, you can notice physical deformities in them. So I would talk about some things that we should watch out for. You just cannot tell by a person, who is maybe what we call experiencing tics or maybe shaking. You cannot tell if that person is on the spectrum because you see that and that seems to be something of a suspect. So what exactly is autism spectrum disorder? So again, I mentioned it includes social, communication, behavior challenges. These problems can be mild, moderate, or severe based on the individual. So early diagnosis is very, very important. And I believe that a lot of parents miss the early diagnosis stages. And once, the child or the youth, or maybe even adults, because some folks really start to notice issues when they are, late teenagers to adults. So it's just really recently that experts found out that there are many different types of spectrum disorders, such as autistic disorder, Asperger's syndrome, pervasive developmental disorder. There is one not otherwise specified, as we call it, PDD. So there's one that is really not specified. So they are all together called autism spectrum disorder. And I'm sure that as years go on, there will be more that will be added to those group of disorders. So we hear people use older names, and we hear them using these names, and we don't know what it means. There are a lot of famous actors and actresses that have been really advocate for spectrum disorder, autistic spectrum disorder. So we find, we all know of Halle Berry. I'm not sure, not Halle Berry. I'm sorry, Toni Braxton, who really was a strong advocate for autism because of her son. And Pete Robertson also is another strong advocate for that too. So what exactly is Asperger's syndrome? So it's on the milder end of the spectrum disorder. These individuals might be very intelligent. So we have what we call higher functioning. These are individuals that might be able to pretty much maintain and handle their daily life. So they are not really focused on fixated on specific things like topics or items or certain things. So these individuals are not the ones that, for example, I've had clients who, are fixated on cars. I had this one client who could tell me every make of a particular car. And he could tell me, how many parts to that car. I had another client who was very much fixated on guns, and he could tell me every single nail or screw that gun was made up of, when the gun was made, every gun that is in the family of that gun. So they are fixated on things, on particular things. And then you may have individuals, fixated on cards or things, anything that may catch the attention. So in Asperger's syndrome, these individuals are not fixated on things. They may be focused on, topics. However, though, they will talk nonstop. So they are focused on those topics, and they find it very difficult to navigate socially. So we may say that, oh, well, this person is in my presence and they can't stop talking. And so, some people may find that, they're a little, we might call them a little awkward, or, things like that. When they find themselves in social gatherings, they may not know how to navigate themselves well in different social gatherings. So then we have what we call pervasive developmental disorder. So it's just what we call a mouthful of diagnosis. Just children with this are also in the spectrum, but they are more severe than Asperger's disorder. So they are not really on fully spectrum of the autistic disorder, but they have the social awkwardness. I don't think that's the right word we say, but they have, they have struggles navigating in social environment. So they also have, a little bit of issues through communications, maintaining and staying on task with communication. Then we have the autistic disorder. So it's an older term used at this day and age. We really don't use autistic disorder, but it's referred to as on the spectrum disorder. So we find that there are some signs and symptoms. How can you tell? How can you tell? What can you look for? So some of the things that you can look for is repetitive movement, like hand shaking, maybe spinning, rocking back and forth. You have to remember now that every individual will not exhibit these signs. Delay in speech, or they do not speak at all. They take a very long time to speak. So if a child is 4 years old and is not speaking on a developmental level of a 4-year-old, then maybe it's questionable to start to look into what is happening with this child. So delay in speech, or they're not speaking at all. They does not understand questions and or directions when giving a directive. You find that you have to repeat over and over to these children. They get aggressive and they get very disruptive. So imagine if you cannot express yourself verbally, and you want a way to express yourself and you're not able to, you will revert to aggression. And so we find that with these children, they will become aggressive or sometimes disruptive. They lack eye contact. You will not find a lot of children on the autism spectrum maintaining eye contact with you. They do not respond to their name. They do not respond to their name. They have social withdrawal, so they are mostly by themselves. You may find them independently playing by themselves. You may find that, they rarely imitate expressions. So if you were making faces, or you were, making funny noises, sounds, they're not likely going to imitate you. If you were to point to objects and to try to get them to point to object, they would struggle to do that as well. They have trouble understanding people's feelings. So if you try to connect with them by trying to get them to empathize with you, they struggle to understand other people's feelings. So for a child who may be disruptive, you may, say to a child, or maybe they hit another child, and you might say, why did you hit your brother or sister? And so that child on the spectrum will look at you like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, because they really don't get it. They really don't make that connection to other people's feelings. So they have trouble expressing themselves. They have trouble using typical words. They have unusual reaction to the way things smell and taste. They are very picky eaters. You find that children that are on the spectrum, they do not eat every and anything. Same thing as the way that things smell, taste, and feel. They have, struggles with that. You have to repeat actions over and over again to them. So if you were to give a directive, you find that you have to tell them, don't sit over there, remove that cup. I need you to close that computer. I need you to take a shower. I need you to take a shower. I need you to wash your hair. I need you to wash your hair. So you find that kids that are on the spectrum too, they do not like to maintain proper hygiene. So we know that boys are more than likely to be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder higher than girls are. So we find that, for boys especially, just to get them to comb their hair or to cut their hair is a struggle. And for girls, vice versa. You find the same characteristics in girls as well. Girls find it very difficult. And so just to get them to kind of, navigate through daily routines. So, a regular child who is not on the spectrum may be set in their routines of waking up in the morning, brushing their teeth, showering, combing their hair. However, a child that is on the spectrum may need extra help, as to sometimes we use pictures, we use graphs where we will have behavioral chats and things around with pictures. Remember, little reminders. This is time to brush your teeth, or have it places in the house where it kind of helps support them to remember that what step is next, because they clearly do need the reminders. We really do not know what causes autism. We have heard stories of vaccines being the sole causes of it. We know that it is not true. There have been studies that have linked autism spectrum disorder to genetics finding within the family. Family history. We find that they are still searching to find a cure. First of all, to find out how it started, what started this, and so it's kind of still fairly new to kind of sort through what is happening with autism and spectrum disorders. There are definitely things that causes triggers for children who are on the spectrum. So you will find that when it's too loud, it's irritating for them. We will find that when it's too hectic, when it's a lot of chaos going on within a specific environment, they cannot handle that. So what happens is that they kind of revert back to their little personal space, or they might have an outburst. We will find that if you are too close to their space, that is an attack for them. We are very careful how we deal with children who are on the autism spectrum, because of course you are invading their personal private space. So if it's too unexpected, it's too close without any warning, that is a threat to them. If it's too bright for them, that is a problem. If things are happening too fast, too high, that's a trigger for them. If they find themselves in unfamiliar situations. So for example, if you had a child who changed maybe daycare, right? And or maybe they were home and then they started daycare, and you will find that they struggle to get adjusted to that environment. And so you will find all of those things to be triggers for them until they kind of get into a routine until they learn how things are done within that environment, it takes a while to get them in the routine. So they do not like it when their clothes are too loose or too tight. It has to be just right. So those are some triggers for them as well. Talking about triggers. So when it comes to change and their environment and their surrounding, it is difficult for them to really adjust to new environments, to new changes. So these are signs that you will look for in a child or even in an infant. We find that early as 18 months, so some early warning signs, 18 months to 2 years old. There are some signs, that early signs that you can see, and there are some developmental milestones that we urge parents to look out for. So, for example, your child is not smiling at 6 months. You smile at them and they do not smile back. You make faces and they do not make any faces. So they have a very flat affect. So, babies bubble, they make noise and all of that. But you are making those faces with your child, and that child is completely blank, and just blank, does not give you any reaction at all. Those are red flags. At again 16 months, when you should have 1 word, 2 words, they are not able to communicate that way. So you may say mommy, they can't say mommy, or daddy, they cannot say daddy to you. So you say, dada, mama, they are not able to repeat those signs. Those are warning signs. Those are red flags. Unusual attachment to one particular toy or object. So you will find that maybe they may have one particular toy that they are very attached to. And if you remove that item or that toy, they will go off. So that's a trigger. So that sends them off in a trigger. So if it's a little girl who has a doll and that's her favorite doll and she plays with that doll all of the time, maybe you felt like you needed to wash the doll, clean up the doll, and you remove that doll, and then she goes off. Not like a regular child will go off and then you calm the child down. With children who are on the spectrum, they have what we call meltdowns, which are quite different from outbursts, right? And we will talk about that a little bit. So not responding to sound, to voices, not sharing their items with other kids. So if the child is in maybe a daycare, they have problems sharing, or maybe they may have other siblings at home, and they may struggle sharing with those siblings as well, or with those other children as well. So there are some myths and facts that everybody, people kind of come up with when it comes to autism and spectrum disorder. And sometimes we hear parents or other individuals say, well, we all have a little bit of autism in us. That is not true. That is something that is unique to a specific group of disorders. And, we have to be careful when we start to minimize it or maybe kind of like to make it universal. And I know sometimes it's an attempt to feel or to make a family feel accepted, or to make a family feel like, you are not in this alone. It is true that there are 1 in 69 child, suffers from autism. So there is a few numbers out there. However, we have to be careful when we start to say everybody has a little bit of, autism in them. That is not a true statement. And I hear that quite often. So again, what are some things to look for? We see defects in social communication, interaction, across the spectrum. There are impairments that we see, but it all does not look the same. So you may find somebody who is higher functioning, who is on the spectrum, but is higher functioning, and they are able to keep a job. They are able to perform their daily routines. they're able to hold conversation. They might be a little chatty to you because they're socially awkward. So you might find that, well, this person can't stop talking. What's going on with that person? I'm pretty sure we know a few people who, you are in their company and socially, they start a conversation and they remain on that one topic and they're focused on that one topic. It's a little difficult for them to navigate through topics to another. So you will find that they will withdraw to themselves. They kind of stay to themselves because of that fear of being judged by other people. Children, individuals, adults that are on the spectrum, they are regular people like you and me. There is no need for us to treat them specially. There is no need for us to go around them and be hypersensitive to their surroundings. However, I think knowing and being aware of what their triggers are, being aware of, how to interact with them will kind of help you and will kind of help them as well. When we start to act around them like, oh, I know, oh, don't worry, I understand. No, they want to be accepted like you want to be accepted. They want to be respected. They want you to treat them as regular people. So things to remember, new environments, they do not adjust well to unfamiliar environments, unexpected changes. When you are too close, when you are too loud, when it's overwhelming, when it's chaotic, they cannot function. And I used to work at Kennedy Krieger Institute in at Johns Hopkins, and I work with autistic on the spectrum, autistic or autism spectrum disorder. We don't say autistic anymore. However, I found that when I was working, I had this one client who was super smart. He was higher functioning. I learned so much from him. So my bias going into working with this client was that he was going to be aggressive because, of course, I didn't know much about working with somebody on the spectrum. I thought that, oh my goodness, I have to be super careful because if I say the wrong thing, he will be aggressive and he will attack me. And he showed me basically how to respond, how to act to him. And he was a regular child with just his own, infirmities. And it's no different from a child who has ADHD or a child who has a learning disability. There is no different. So making sure that, we go in and we acknowledging and, we do not single these individuals out as well. So usually autism spectrum disorder is kind of comorbid. It always goes hand in hand with another diagnosis. So you will find that individuals who are on the spectrum may also be diagnosed with ADHD or maybe anxiety disorder, maybe depression, bipolar, mood disorder. So it always follows something else, what we call comorbid. It's like, more than one happening at the same time. So for parents, it's very important that your home is structured in a way that is supportive to your child, to your child's needs. I talk about some triggers, some red flags, some things that we need to watch out for. If you notice that you have a child who, when it gets super loud, your child has a meltdown, then it's time to pay attention to really what's happening. Sometimes as parents, we miss the signs. We miss the signs because we are thinking something else. I find this to be true, especially in African American cultures. In African cultures, Caribbean cultures, we do not at all believe in mental health illnesses. So maybe you may have a child who is not talking at 5 years old or at 6 years old. You're not concerned because you feel that, oh, that child will talk. And then you find that you put your child in social settings. Your child does not play well with other kids their age. Maybe they do not share their toys. Maybe they want to be left alone. They do not want to be around other children. and that is something that is concerning to you, but you don't know how to go about, getting help for your child. So I mentioned earlier that who is affected, everybody can be affected. So I mean black, I mean white, Asian, girl, boy. I think in earlier times when the illness came out and people were trying to figure out, we see this more in boys than we do in girls. This is true. There are a higher amount of boys that are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. However, there are girls also that are on the spectrum. And so paying attention to those behaviors that falls within that spectrum disorder. So, and we find that also children who have siblings with spectrum disorder, we find that they too may fall within the spectrum as well. And so who was expected? Every ethnic group, socioeconomic status. You don't have to be poor, so it's not people living in poverty that is suffering from this. It's not rich women that are suffering or rich people that are suffering from this. It's not people who chooses not to vaccinate their children. It's a myth that we say, well, if I do, or if I vaccinate my child, they will have autism. Anybody who is vaccinated or not is really at risk for being on the spectrum. So what can we do? A lot of states, if you are concerned that you may have a child, a family member that is on the spectrum, there a lot of healthcare departments within various states, they will give you free testing. All you have to do is to call your local Department of Health and you let them know that you would like to have a test done for autism spectrum disorder. And it's a free test. You do not have to pay out of pocket. Your insurance do not have to cover that. And they will give you a test. And then you will take it from there. If you find that those tests came back positive, you can seek help by seeing a therapist. Your child's pediatrician can also help you with that. And, you can start working really to kind of build some form of care and treatment to treat it. So it's true that, early childhood developmental centers as well. So your pediatrician will have that information for you as well. So making sure that you are adhering to all of these triggers, all of these early warning signs. So again, if you have a child who is 6 months old and, is not developmentally tuned, like smiling, when you smile at that child, smile back. If that child does not smile back, that's a red flag. Lots of parents that did not give their children vaccine still have the kids with autism. This is very true, which is why I say that it's a myth that children that are vaccinated have, autism. We find lots of studies have shown that children who are indeed not vaccinated still do have autism. So it is not true. So we know that there are a lot of warning signs that we can look for, a lot of things that we can highlight. Early intervention is the key, is very, very important. Paying attention to this early warning sign. If you feel that something is off, if you feel that your child is not responding to social clues, something that we may say, oh, my child is clumsy. That is because the motor skills, the motor development, is not fully developed. So for a child who is falling over things, who is throwing things over, we may say, oh, he is clumsy or she is clumsy. That can really be a warning sign that, they are struggling within the motor development skills. So I I would like to bring in a guest at this time who has a child that is living with autism spectrum disorder, and we will have a few questions and answers segment, and then we will dive into our segment with questions and answers. So I am going to bring her through. I need light. Is it dark? Okay. I am going to put my light on. Thank you for noting that. All my helpers tonight are gone, so it's just me. Oh, my light is not coming on. Can you guys see me? Am I too dark? I'm waiting for my guest to log on. All right, so I'm going to add, is it too dark? I am going to turn the light on a little bit. So excuse me for a minute. All righty, I'm back. She's not on yet. Can you guys see me? Where is my guest? I invited you, Wasela, if you can just accept it. Is it better now? All right, so while she's taking time to come on, I know I'm all chocolate. She is taking time to come on. Let me see what is going on here. So all right, so I have a guest who is going to share her story with us. So again, if we just kind of want to go over a little bit. Hey sis, there you go.
Come here,
You did it.
come on. Come on. Hi. Come here.
All right, she's on now.
Come. Just come. Come on. Zamir, come on. Come on. Just come here. Come this way. Come on. Real quick. Don't do that.
Hello.
Hi.
That's Zamir.
Hi, honey.
Say hi.
Hi, Samel. How are you?
I'm good.
I know your mom is embarrassing you, right? He's like, don't put me on this live video.
Yeah, that's
You didn't tell me?
Thank you so much, Wasela, for doing this tonight.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I know that it's not easy to come on and, share your story.
In a short notice, too. So if I make any...
On a short notice, yes. On a short notice. So I really do appreciate you for accepting my request to come on the Friendly Counselor Live tonight.
You're welcome.
So, okay. So we are talking a little bit tonight. We're talking about autism spectrum disorder.
Yes.
And I thought that you would be the perfect person to share your story because you have a child who is on the spectrum.
Right.
And I just wanted to, you have such a great testimony, great. Just when you told me how you got the advocate involved in it, I said, wow, so many folks, need to hear your story because we kind of sometimes think we're in this all by ourselves and we are all alone. And just hearing what you went through to get the help that you are receiving now for your child.
Mhm.
I think it was tremendous effort on your part. You are a very strong mother.
We all try our best. We all doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So tonight, I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, or from your experience,
Mhm.
what what is it like day to day, living and dealing the daily struggles of living with a child who is on the spectrum?
Um, I mean, right now it's a lot better.
Okay.
Before I got the diagnosis, I would say I, because I did the work.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what he had
Mm.
when he was little. He was my first child,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew it wasn't right. You know,
Mm.
he,
What are some things that you saw that didn't seem right to you? What are some triggers or early warning signs that you kind of stood out, red flags that were not just right to
I'll
you?
put him down. He would just sit there. He would not touch
Mm-hmm.
nothing. As a child, that's not, that's not normal. And then
Mm-hmm.
he was like, so like, how do you call it, 6 months, 8 months. Still, he would not play with anything, even if I put it in front of him. And like 12 months old, still he was still not even saying mama,
Mm.
and I start complaining to the doctor, like,
Mm-hmm.
he's really not saying things that he's supposed to. And then I keep looking, like, okay, 6 months he was supposed to, like, at least start grabbing things, and he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so by 12 months, 14 months, he's still not even, like, with crawling, it's still like a
Mm-hmm.
struggle. So
Mm-hmm.
from me showing the doctor my concerns, he
Mm-hmm.
put me through early intervention. That was our
Mm-hmm.
first start. Because,
Mm-hmm.
not talking, not crawling well, and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, something is really not right. So early
Mm-hmm.
intervention came in. They started with and the first thing, as a parent, don't be in denial. That's our
Mm-hmm.
first mistake. A lot of parents,
Yes.
they always in denial. They like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he will get there, she will get there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a lot of our African parents. Oh, my child is not, he will do this, he will get there. No, I was like, anything I can do or I can get, I'm gonna get it. So early intervention
Mm-hmm.
came in. They
Mm-hmm.
did physical therapy evaluation, OT evaluation, occupational therapy, and then they
Mm-hmm.
did speech evaluation.
Mm.
Everything he was lacking.
Mm.
Then they started right away early intervention, because when you're under
Which is
three,
good. Yeah.
you're under
Mm-hmm.
three, they start at home. So they started the early intervention. By the time he
Mm-hmm.
hit three, it was time for him to start a preschool.
Mm-hmm.
And they discussed it with me, meeting and all of that. I had like couple of choices to go look into preschool with the services that he's gonna get. And because he really needed the physical therapy, he was really, even
Mm-hmm.
he can pedal a tricycle. There
Mm.
was one that stood out for me is JCC. They had
Mm-hmm.
water therapy also, which was
Mm-hmm.
really helpful for him because he was really
Mm-hmm.
scared of water. So they put him in JCC. He was
Mm-hmm.
getting, and they started him in a very small class with only 6 children. Was
Mm-hmm.
he he was scared in crowded place. And
Mm.
a lot of people who knew me with Zamil, he was always so attached to me,
Mm-hmm.
and if he was getting the services in preschool and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, and he started, he finished the preschool, cut that short, and he went to kindergarten. He started
Mhm.
regular. It was a regular public school near us, but still, he is
Mhm.
still in a smaller class, very small class. With
Mhm.
he didn't get a power yet, but he was so
Mm.